I begin, I want to highlight some upcoming events. We have the next CITRIS Research Exchange that's going to be held on Wednesday, September 21st from 12 to 1 p.m. And the discussion will be on when do local governments use tech to improve transparency, the case of California Transit. And that presentation will be by Allison Post, who's an associate professor of political science and global metropolitan studies at UC Berkeley. So I encourage you all to check the CITRIS webpage for registration details and for any further updates. And you can see here all of the research exchange presentations that we'll have after that as well. So I won't cover them all, but lots of great stuff coming up over this next semester. So just wanted to quickly review our virtual participation guidelines before we get into the talk. If you could all please post your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. So you should see a Q&A icon in the Zoom toolbar at the bottom. You just click on that and post your questions there. And for anyone else, you can, if you click a thumbs up on a question that you see in the Q&A that you like, that'll bring it to the top of the Q&A window, and it'll be more likely to get answered that way. And we will answer all those questions at the end of the talk, so there'll be time then. So go ahead and enter your questions as we go. So today I am delighted to introduce Dr. Becca Fenwick, a colleague of mine here at UC Santa Cruz. And here at UCSC, Becca is developing, along with our colleague, Dr. Justin Cummings, the CITRIS Initiative for Drone Education and Research, also known as CIDER. And I should say has developed. So this is a program that's running and successful, and has been a really exciting process to set up. So the program brings together a really diverse group of students, researchers, and industry partners from many different sectors, with the goal of fueling research and innovation, and also to developing a diverse drone workforce. And Becca will talk at length about that. So Becca has been working with drones for many years, and her work unites her many varied skill sets. She's just accomplished in many different areas. So she has a tremendous amount of geospatial expertise, and much of that comes from her PhD in marine geology and geophysics that she got from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And she has tremendous land conservation expertise also from almost a decade of work serving as reserve director for the UC Natural Reserve System, and also 15 years as the director of environmental IT for the UC NRS as well, where she developed a broad statewide tech and sensor network to track climate and other parameter and other things. So it's a tremendous honor to welcome Becca, and I'm excited to hear her talk today.
Great, thanks, Michael. Let me just share my screen and we can get started. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to kick off this seminar series and get to tell you all about our new CITRIS Initiative for Drone Education and Research, or CIDER, at UCSC. We do get to have fun saying CITRIS CIDER, and hopefully we'll have other flavors of CIDER as well as we go. But yeah, always play the fun game of acronyms, which is great. Okay. So the CIDER mission, so we're here and doing drone instruction and supporting research. We're aiming to bring together diverse students, researchers, and industry partners from across the drone industry spectrum, I guess, and all the different sectors. And this showcases both the UC and the UC Santa Cruz's growing statewide leadership role in the drone tech fields. We're all really close to Silicon Valley, and so that helps a lot. And this is the first ever undergraduate drone academic training program in the UC system. And we're really excited to tell you all about it. So there are 5 pillars to the program. The first one that we focus on a lot is the support for underrepresented students. This is, as with all tech fields, the drone industry is very white and very male, and both Justin and myself and Michael and our other partners are very conscious of this. And given that the industry is so young, we really want to start the industry with a diverse workforce and diverse people working in it from the very beginning. It's much easier to set that up now than it is to try and correct it later. Santa Cruz is very keen on experiential learning, and that is true for our program as well. So we focus on getting drones in the hands of students and having them have that hands-on learning experience, which is just so important for really understanding what it is that you're doing. In conjunction with those, we have research support, both for faculty, researchers, postdocs, grad students, everybody. So if they have questions around drones, what drone to use, what sensors are available, how to process data, what's possible, then we're here as a resource and you can come talk to us. We also partner with industry. So we do a lot of industry outreach, both asking industry what we can do to help them. Are there questions that they need answering? Can we pair them with researchers or students to try and answer those questions? But also, what can they do for us? How can we partner and help get a broad funding base for the program? And additionally, if they're looking for employees, what skill sets are they looking for? And how can we provide the training that's needed to our students to have those skills so that they're then that much more employable in the workforce? And one way we can do that is by taking commercial contracts. So part of our program, which I'll talk about in a minute, is training the students and getting them their 107 licenses. So they're qualified drone pilots. And then when we accept commercial contracts, either internally UC or external contracts, then we employ our students who we've trained to actually do that work. And so then when they're earning a great wage while they're a student, and then when they're graduating, they already have field experience and know how to do a lot of these things, which is really great. So we had, long lists of objectives, short-term and long-term. One of our big first-year objectives is to continue working with UC Drone Camp. So this is a long-term collaboration with UC A&R, CSUMB, UC Merced, UC Santa Cruz, UC Natural Reserve Systems, a whole bunch of us who work together to put this on every year. This is a week-long summer camp, basically, to learn how to fly drones, how to process data. And it's usually put on at the CSU Monterey Bay campus, so down in Marina. It's a beautiful place to come and spend a week in sort of June, July time. We've set up ways to take commercial contracts. We're in the midst of developing curriculum for undergraduates and high school students, focusing on student mentorship and experiential learning, like I mentioned. The longer term objectives that we're looking for are continuing our first year ones and making them bigger and better. Eventually, what I would love to do, and I keep saying this, and hopefully we'll figure out how to make this happen, is to have a minor in drone in both the arts and the sciences, so that skill set, that sort of Swiss Army knife of the sky, as I like to think of them, can articulate into whatever major the students are doing and whatever research they're looking at. Obviously supporting large-scale multi-campus research and the usual revenue streams and academic leaders in drone use and development as you move through the system. So I mentioned the pilot training program. This is the education sort of arm of our program, as led by our colleague and associate director, Dr. Justin Cummings. So I will channel Justin and tell you all about our program. We launched a first cohort last year, so the applications were accepted in the fall. We had 28 applicants with a really short period for application, so we're really pleased with that result. You can see below the applicant and accepted demographics. So, definitely overwhelmingly male, which is to be expected, a lot of engineering and students like that. And we did, like I said, we're focusing on the diversifying drone workforce. So looking at hopefully a high percentage of BIPOC students who can take this course, and we can support them through this process. We got a really great representation from the targeted groups. So we had financial need, Pell Grant, veterans, transfer students, underrepresented students, and first gen, which was absolutely fantastic. And also a really good selection of majors and minors. So the ones that you would expect, like physics and engineering, in different flavors. But we also had anthropology, we had arts, we had people who were doing theater and, sociology, applied math. And so it was a really nice, diverse group of students in all sorts of different ways. And it really gave rise to a lot of really interesting conversations around the ethical use of drones, the ways that they can be applied, and really sort of digging into more than just turning them on and doing a survey, which was really, really heartening to see. So the model of the program is that we have staff instruction. We invite professionals from within the field, both within the UC system and also external to it, to come in and provide training and lecture the students and give them sort of examples of what can be done and what is being done. There's mentorship opportunities where the students are engaged one-on-one and giving them personal support. We do a study preparation for the FAA 107 exam and provide classroom and hands-on experiential learning opportunities and give them an opportunity to learn about different career trajectories. I should also say at this point that this is a non-credit bearing extracurricular course. And so the students are doing this out of their own time. And so to enable different students to take part and recognizing that their time is worth things to them, we do actually give the students a stipend while they're doing the course as well. And so they get paid for their time. We cover the costs of their FAA 107 exam. And then obviously, once they have that exam and they've got their license, in theory, we can employ them. So the initial version that we did this last year was a 9-week course, 2 days a week for 2 hours a day. There was about 5 times that they met for preparation for their 107 exam and flight training. And then the rest of the sessions were team building, introduction to drones, looking at hardware, talking about safety, mapping, data processing, and other aspects of using drones. With the feedback that we got from the students and the different instructors who came in, we're switching it up a little for this next year to see if this would work better. So we're actually going to spread it over 2 quarters. So we'll do 8 weeks in the winter quarter, 8 weeks in the spring quarter. We'll stick with the 2 days a week, 2 hours a day sort of structure of it. And then we're increasing the amount of time spent on test prep for the license exam, and also increasing the amount of in-person flight training. So this will give the students much more time with hands on sticks and being able to really practice and hone their flight skills. We're also putting more time into GIS. This is as everyone is aware, a huge topic and a huge thing to introduce to students in 2 sessions, which is what we tried last year. So we're going to have more GIS sessions so they can have more time to really understand the system, but also what it can do, and give them an idea of where to start when they're putting their data into GIS. Overwhelmingly, the students loved the program. They really, really enjoyed getting outside, being able to be around their student peers, because obviously this was right when we were starting to come back into in-person instruction. And so the picture you have on this slide here is of them, their first meeting. So we're out and we're showing them all the drones out in the courtyard. And this is the first time that they're seeing a lot of their colleagues face to face. They've had classes with them for 6 months at this point, but hadn't actually seen them in person. So it was great. So 15 of our 18 students who completed the course signed up for the exam, and 13 of them passed it. And we hired 7 of them to do work with us when we do these contract work, both for UC and non-UC. So what were the outcomes for the students who came through the program this last year? 2 of them got summer paid internships in agriculture and wildfire with some of the CIDER industry partners. 2 of the students graduating from the engineering program were hired full-time by Skydio, which was fantastic. And the connection was through our career panel. The students took the opportunity to reach out and talk to the hiring officer who was there and got jobs, and they're loving them. They're having a great time. We had several students get connected with professors on campus and who are now hired into their research programs as student workers. And one of our students actually got a grant through the UCSE Earth Futures Institute Frontiers Fellow Program. So that funded her this summer to work with a grad student that we work really closely with, looking at detecting disease using AI and drone data. Some of the things that we've done as the contract opportunities that the students have been helping out on and getting paid for is building inspections on campus. A lot of the roofs on the Santa Cruz campus are inaccessible. They're beautiful, but you can't get on them to actually look at the drains and what the condition of the roof is. So one of the things that we do is we fly them with drones, and then they can get high resolution images and video of what's actually going on. And then if issues are found, then the facilities and building maintenance can then address them. We have done photography and videography of the John Lewis College dedication, and we did the commencement this summer. We've done some research flight for faculty, and then we've also been working with external companies on environmental surveys. We have in process a $500,000 contract with state parks to look at some of their park landscapes for illegal cannabis grows, and using LiDAR to detect that and look at the health of the landscape. So excited about where this is going to go, and we keep talking with different companies to see what's going on. So that's the education side of things. And one of the other big projects that we've gotten involved with over the last sort of year or so is looking at workforce development, both from an educational pipeline perspective, but also from how do we engage existing workforce and train them and upskill them to get better jobs. This was something we're interested in anyway, but due to our community connections, started talking with the James Irvine Foundation, and they awarded us $1 million 15-month planning grant last fall. Or actually, we started talking with them last fall. We got the funding in May. And so we're just ramping up right now into sort of what that looks like, engaging with the community down in the Salinas and Pajaro Valley region. What needs are there in the community, both from a workforce need, like what are the jobs that would be available or are available for people with drone and automation skills? And then also, what are the needs in the community to train, and what skills that they need to get those jobs and to move forward in their careers. So we're having those conversations, we're figuring out where those needs are and defining what that workforce training program would look like. We're in discussions with the foundation about funding for that training program. So as we're defining it and figuring out what we want it to look like, we're figuring out what funding we'd need for that, both in terms of capacity building in community organizations and in ourselves, but also funding to support equipment and the students and people who are doing the trainings. And then sort of the ongoing ideas for this is looking for funding for the education pipeline as well as the workforce development, and then working with our aviation partners in CITRIS to develop more curriculums, both for high school, undergraduate, and workforce training. To that end, we're also looking at and talking with regional workforce development boards to address the needs that they see coming down in the future in terms of more building projects or construction or changes in the agriculture techniques in the industry that they see there, and other ways that drones are really incredibly important, including in our local area, talking with Joby and sort of the airspace transportation, which isn't strictly speaking drones, but drones are a sort of a gateway drug, as it were, to aviation. They're a really easy way to start getting engaged in that aerospace industry and moving forward and getting ideas on how you could be involved and how cool it is. So for the work we're doing with the James Irvine Foundation, we sort of think of this in two pipelines or two pathways, or there's lots of different ways that you can explain what we're connecting, but the center core of it is how do we connect different levels and different types of education and sort of engagement to create a pathway and a way forward for people to move through the different levels of training that they may well want to get. So the education pipeline starts in middle and high school. We work with the UCSC and Hartnell Community College MESA programs, engaging with the students while they're still in school, because of course you can get your 107 when you're 16. So are there people who want to get their license and start working with drones straight out of high school? Great, that's awesome. Here's the skills that you need for do that. If you want to take it further and engage on a deeper level, you can do that at community college, at the UC, at the CSU, and also in graduate school. So how do we knit those together so that students not only are aware of the opportunities that are there for them, but also can move with ease from one to the next and move through the system, gaining information and skills as they go. So that's the education pipeline. So we're working on to defining that and coordinating and linking all the different pieces together. The workforce development pipeline is similar, but is from an external perspective. So these are not people who are necessarily enrolled in school. They may be doing sort of young adult education or reskilling, learning coding and things like this. This is for our Digital Nest partners. It can also be continuing education, community college classes, or extension classes, professional development, those kind of things. This can be people who are in the workforce and either their employers are sending them to get additional training, or they themselves are interested in getting additional training so they can then apply for different jobs in the same industry or in different or adjacent ones. So what are those opportunities? How can we link those ones together and provide this sort of ecosystem of training for existing workforce? So the next sort of steps and where we're going to with this James Irvine project is focusing in on incoming new workers and also incumbent workers, those existing people, and really defining what that program is and funding it and moving it forward for the next 2 to 5 years. Moving forward with the education pipeline and securing funding for that, and working really closely with the communities that we're in, because we don't want to go into these communities with the answer. We want to go in and ask them what they need and help develop in partnership with them these programs that answer those needs and support the communities and the education and training needs that they have. This program that we're working with now, which will be great, we're looking at leveraging the Invest Center in Marina, which is a UCSC campus facility, and hoping that we can have a training center developed there over the next 5 years, which would be fantastic. And so it wouldn't just be for drones, but it'd be for automation perhaps, and different types of advanced manufacturing, a research hub, and an innovation center where people can come together, train, learn, and create new knowledge, all in the same space. So it'll be a really interesting process and catalyzing a lot of good work that's happening down there. Our main partners that we are working with on this project are Hartnell Community College, that's based down in Salinas, Digital Nest, which is a nonprofit that engages students and young people from, I think, the age of 14 to 25. And then they have a whole sequence of trainings from videography to coding, all sort of tech focused, and drones are going to be integrated into that, which is fantastic. The MESA program, like I mentioned, at UC Santa Cruz, and then also the UC Santa Cruz Center for Innovations in Teaching and Learning. They're helping us design a curriculum and actually sort of shape how we're teaching in sort of culturally and academically and knowledge appropriate ways. We're also working with the Institute for Social Transformation, and they're focused on building sort of capacity in the community so that the community organizations can really be involved and sort of take part in this in a really significant way, which is fantastic. We're also working really closely with the Monterey Bay Drones, Automation, Robotics, and Technology Initiative, also known as DART. They're looking at it from much more of a economic driving and economic development standpoint. We're coming from the academic and training side, but come together and we can create great training programs and training facilities and hoping to make a really big difference in the region, which will be fantastic. So when we're talking about our industry partners and who we're talking to about all the different things that we're doing, this is just a sampling of some of the companies that we've been working pretty closely with in all sorts of different ways, from student internships to research partnerships. We've been talking about doing some product testing for some of our partners and doing case studies where we can take their equipment or their sensors and run it through its paces and come up with data, and we can show them how it works. And then the one that I particularly like is the product discounts, so that we can try equipment and really sort of dive into more of the cutting edge stuff and get excited about the fun things that we can achieve. So I mentioned a couple of times that we now are working, doing research support contracts and sort of contracts for different people. And this is facilitated through a recharge unit, which was established just this past July. This covers drone services, data processing and analysis, equipment rental, but for UC only. And then we employ our students, undergraduates and graduates, to fly. They just have to have their 107 and some flight experience. And then we also support faculty research. So if people have a desire to use drones, but they don't know exactly which drone or what sensor or how to structure it, then we can work through those issues and sort of bring the expertise that we have as a group to bear and help answer their questions and find ways to address those experiments, which is great. Just some examples of some of the data that we have been gathering. We've been working with the UC Natural Reserve Younger Lagoon, which is on the coastal campus here at Santa Cruz. And we've been doing quarterly drone surveys from 2019 through to present. And so this is like zooming in on the lagoon, and looking at how it changes through the seasons and over the years, which gives us great information about the health of the lagoon, health of the vegetation, and you can actually sort of zoom in on a particular year and look at a detailed 12-month cycle of vegetation greening up, drying down. What are the variants? How it looks like there's algae blooms in there, and health of the landscape. And if we continue to do this over time, then this gives us a long time scale of change in the area as well. The image on the left is the full survey of the whole reserve, not just the lagoon. So you can see in context that it's a small part of it. It's very cool. And then this is actually a video that I took, well, sort of took. We went to Hastings Reservation down in Carmel Valley this past Monday, and using a brand new to us drone. It's a Skydio 2+, and they have a 3D scan option. So you basically can set up the perimeters of your survey, you define the top and the bottom of it, and then the drone using AI flies itself and goes around and takes a bunch of photos of this structure, which in this case is a very, very old dead oak tree that the acorn woodpeckers have been using as a granary tree. So they drill holes in it and they fill them with acorns, and then they come back later in the season and actually eat the acorns. So they have a place to store their food. The reason we did this is there's an artist from San Francisco State University that has been working down at the reserve and has fallen in love with this tree. And so they requested that we do a digital twin of it that can then be 3D printed. And then I believe she's going to photograph the 3D printed version of this tree with old style photography. And it's a sort of study of the meta connections of reality documented digitally to then make into its own actual physical representation and then re-represented through film. And I'm sure she can tell you more about all of the layers of that than I can, but it sort of gives you a sense of the range of things that we can do and have been working on with our drones and working with researchers. So that's the quick overview of the CITRIS Initiative for Drone Education and Research here at UC Santa Cruz. I would love to take any questions you guys have.
Great, thank you, Becca. So we have an initial question in our Q&A. Let's see if I can pull it up again. Where did my Q&A go? Well, one question that I have is, could you tell us more about the compensation for students and how that's important in benefiting diversity in the program?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of studies done sort of looking into why diverse students or people who have different backgrounds either participate or don't in extracurricular activities. And one of the key factors is that if you are coming from an economically disadvantaged background, you will often have to work while you're in college because college is expensive. And this means that you can't take part in these extracurricular activities that are volunteer-based. And so one of the solutions to this is actually providing stipends for these students so that their time is compensated, so that they have a good wage for the time that they're doing this training. And so we pay them, I think, at $15 an hour for the time that they're here. So the new round, the extended program that we're running for this year, the students will actually be receiving a stipend of $1,600 for the 8 weeks that they are going to be, well, sorry, the 16 weeks that they'll be taking part, 8 weeks in the winter quarter and 8 weeks in the spring quarter.
Great. I'm sorry, I'm having a challenge. Somehow the Q&A is not, Q&A window is not coming up. So I guess one other question while I'm working on that, if you could tell us a little bit more about Drone Camp and who tends to come to Drone Camp and what they learn while they're there.
Sure. So Drone Camp is aimed at the academic community, but we do have participation from the public, the general public as well. So mostly academics, but yeah, we've had pest control people, we've had real estate folks, and sort of people who are just generally interested in drones and really excited about it. So they come and they sort of, the proverbial fire hose happens, and there's an amazing breadth of lectures and information that's provided from here are all the different types of drones that are out there and the benefits and challenges for them, the cost, why would you want to use drone A over drone B, running through that at the beginning, some basic introduction to the FAA test and sort of what to expect from the 107 exam and how that could work. We have classes on GIS, both basic and advanced, sort of looking at data analysis, how to get your data into ArcGIS and also QGIS, and how does that, what can that tell you? What can you do in there to use that? And yeah, all sorts of fun courses. I think it's dronecampca.org. I might be wrong about that, but we can put the link in the chat and certainly share that information out to everybody. We do have student scholarships as well. So for undergraduates at different campuses and different organizations, they can apply for those and get a discount on taking part in it, which is great. One of the questions that I can see is why there's a need to increase the test preparation time for 107. Is the exam really memorize a bit of garbage and know how to read aeronautical charts, whether it supports and NOTAMs? Well, to a certain extent, yes. I liken it to the written test for your car driving license, right? So it doesn't necessarily tell you how to fly a drone, but it gives you the background and the information that you need to understand when you can fly a drone and sort of pulling all those regulations and that information together. That was actually, we decided to increase that study time based on the students' request. So one of the things that I was personally really surprised about, the feedback we got from our students, was that they wanted more time for test prep. They wanted more time on the drones. That wasn't a surprise. And they wanted more homework. And I was like, really? Okay, we will give you more homework. So we're trying it with an extended prep time and seeing if that helps. There was also some students didn't pass, which we were really quite surprised about. So I think having study groups, having increased test prep will definitely help with that. And we'll get feedback and see how it runs this next year and adjust as needed. Brendan, you guys can come and visit anytime you want. Just give me a shout. My contact information is there, so come and see what we're doing. And yeah, we'd be happy to show you guys around. Okay, expanding on your efforts related to the use of drones for building inspections and energy efficiency. Yeah, so I happen to know some building facilities guys here on campus through my work here for 7 or 8 years. And I was chatting with Nate one day, and he's like complaining about being able to inspect the roofs on campus. And so I was like, well, we could just go take pictures. And he was very excited about that. So we've done a couple of test flights now and different things. I think my favorite example was for one of the dorms on campus. I guess they had contracted out with roof inspectors, and roof inspectors apparently, when they bid on the project, hadn't actually come to see the building and to see the conditions around the building. So when they arrived to do their contract, which I believe was on the order of $20,000, they couldn't actually get the scissor lifts that they needed close enough to the building because there was redwood trees all around the building, which is why the roofs needed inspecting. And so they just couldn't do the contract. They're like, we can't actually get our equipment close to the building to actually be able to do this. And so, yeah, I got a phone call and they asked me to put together an estimate for doing that. And with our recharge rates and our students, it was like $2,000 to do the roof inspection. And so they were very excited about that, had us fly it. We do have to be careful on that around concerns around privacy. And so we time our flights for when the students are either not in the dorms, or we notify everybody that it's happening. We have protocols in place about how the cameras are oriented as they're going up and down the buildings, and what they're actually looking at, and what data we're collecting once they're up and looking at the roofs. So we do take that into account and are very conscious of that. Yeah, so we're looking at that, I'm super interested in potentially using our thermal cameras over the solar panels. And so working with facilities around that, because obviously as the panels get less efficient or there's trouble with the connections, they get hotter because there's more resistance. So it's an easy way to see which panels may or may not need attention, which is great. We're also thinking about doing stack inspections on the buildings as well. So as the HVAC systems age, they need to be able to be inspected, and getting up close and personal with the stacks on top of a 5 or 10-story building can be quite treacherous to do in person. So being able to send the drones up and have them do that inspection is going to be great and much safer for people, which is great. Okay. We're working on ground penetrating radar for things like detecting landmines in Berkeley. Can classes we have at the DVC on drones work with CIDER? Yes, that would be great. I was actually just talking with some collaborators last week about looking at ground penetrating radar and wanting to mount it on drones and see what we could detect with it. So I would love to talk to you about that. Absolutely. 2 days a week, 2 hours a day for the training program in person or on Zoom. So what we have been doing is in person, but obviously as we may need to go remote again or not, then it can be adjusted. The first few weeks of the first cohort was on Zoom and remote, and then we switched to in person. The flight time that the course provides is, I think we're doing 5 weeks of 2 hours a session, so 10 hours of flight time for this new, for the version this year. Last year, I think it was 6 or 8 hours of flight time, so a little bit more. And yeah, no experience is necessary. We assume that people have no experience with drones when they come to the course. So start from the very beginning and go from there, which is great. So yeah, we've got what drones are we using for the flight training. So we start them on the Mavic Mini 2, I think is the one that we have, like the little $300 ones. On the theory that if those crash, it's not that expensive. And they're relatively easy to fix when they might hypothetically crash. From there, we move up to the Mavics, Mavic Pros, and give them stick time on our Matrice, both the 200 and the 210 and the 300. And then we do demo the EBX that we have for them, but that's more of an advanced flight technique, and it's a whole different control system. So that we tend to save for the students who are actually employed with us and actually do those larger environmental surveys, which is where we'll use the EBX for. So yeah, full range of them. And we just got a Skydio 2 Plus, so we'll be training them on that one as well.
Becca, one other question regarding the curriculum. So you mentioned that the aim of the program is certainly to develop something curricular or have a minor in the future, but talk a little bit about the importance of extracurricular programs and the sort of feedback that employers have given around that.
Yeah, this was another thing that I personally found quite surprising, is that when we're talking to our industry partners, one of the questions we ask them all the time is, what is it that you're looking for in potential employees? What are the things that make a candidate stand out and be more desired as an employee? And one of the things that they've said over and over again is that GPA is great. Standard classes are fantastic. That's great. Capstone, awesome. But what we're really looking for is those extracurricular, the add-ons that are on top of that. That's really what makes a student stand out. So we're actually thinking that keeping the pilot training course as an extracurricular course is actually a really good thing, so that it is one of those additional add-ons. It shows that students are really motivated to learn this. They're willing to put their time in outside of class to learn these skills and to have these experiences. And it definitely seems to have benefited the students who took the course this last year, and in terms of the internships and the jobs they've been able to get. So yeah, we're really excited about it, and we'll continue to work that.
And that really increases the importance of the compensation that the students are getting, because yeah, the students from underrepresented backgrounds who otherwise are not doing extracurricular or less have less access to extracurricular activities, this seems like a leveler for them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Great. Another follow-up question, have you considered getting some small hobby class fixed wings quads for training due to their very low cost? Yes, but I hadn't actually looked into what models that would be good for that. So if you have some suggestions, please send them our way and we would love to incorporate those. I always fun to add more different types of drones to give students experience with different platforms.
So if there are no other questions in the Q&A, is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with, Becca?
Just that if anyone wants to chat about drones, yes, do we teach students how to process drone imagery? We do, yeah. So we use both Pix4D and also Drone Deploy at the moment. We are looking at the Esri drone software. That is something that I'm working on right now and sort of seeing how that could be integrated into the program as well. So yes, there are multiple different ways of processing data, and the bonus about Drone Deploy is that it's very easy to use, and so it's a great place for students to start. You just have to upload the data, and then you can tweak a few things, and then you get your data the next day. Pix4D is sort of the next step up from that, where you start to be able to customize it a little and change the variables to tweak the data and sort of have ways to get rid of some different artifacts and things like that. We haven't been talking about teaching them to write their own programs. That is definitely something we've looked into, but it's also being taught to a lot of the students in their majors, which they're already doing. And so, we don't necessarily want to duplicate things that they're learning in other venues. But yes, if there's need and interest, we will definitely incorporate that into the training in the future. Another question from Merced, is there any discussion about creating programs for advanced users, such as processing with R, Python, machine learning approaches, point clouds, that kind of thing? Yes, I would love to. We're getting this one off the ground first, and then as we get really solid in terms of funding and we have more capacity in terms of staffing, yes, we would love to. Either we can develop those courses, or we can work with interested faculty to develop those courses as well. Because that's the other option, right? It's that we could, if they're faculty who are interested in these aspects or in drones, then we can work with them, and then they can teach the classes as well. So it doesn't have to be a CIDER class. We can help and support other curriculum development and other course development around across the campus and even between campuses. So absolutely.
Another question, is it just aerial drones?
Currently, yes, but that's just because they're an easy entry point, and that's where our current expertise is. We are actively working with ag tech and looking at terrestrial drones, and so the robotics in terms of agriculture. There's lots of different things that those are doing. And then we're also really interested in moving into the marine space and the blue tech, and sort of looking at ocean drones and other water-based technology. That's definitely on the expansion list. It was great chatting with everybody, and thank you for such fantastic questions. I'd happy to chat more. Just shoot me an email or get in touch, and yeah, love to talk about it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Becca, and thanks everyone for coming. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, is that another question on the Q&A?
My email address. If the organizers can send my email out as part of the announcement for the program, that would be fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Becca, and enjoy, everyone. See you at the next one.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thanks,
afternoon.
everybody.
You too.
It was a great talk.